The aisle runner was still wrinkled from the morning, and my veil kept catching on my earrings. An officer slid a printed notice onto the officiant's folder in front of my bridesmaids and the venue coordinator. "Ma'am, your marriage license was flagged." Nobody moved. Not the officiant with his hands locked around that folder like it was a hot plate. Not my maid of honor with her bouquet held too high, knuckles pale against the ribbon. Not my husband-to-be, my fiancé, standing a half step behind me with his fingers still touching the small of my back like he could guide me through it. The string quartet kept playing because nobody had told them to stop. A violin line drifted into the space between the first two rows. The photographer's shutter clicked once, twice, then stopped, like he realized what he was doing and couldn't undo it. I looked down at the notice. White paper. Black print. A county seal at the top that I'd never cared about until that second. The officer didn't point. He didn't explain. He just kept his hand resting on the edge of the folder, pinning the paper there so it couldn't slide off. My bouquet stems dug into my palm. I loosened my grip a fraction, and the ribbon squeaked against my fingers. The venue coordinator, Erin, who had been counting down minutes all morning, shifted her weight in her heels. Her clipboard pressed into her thigh. She didn't look at me. She looked at the officer's shoulder patch, then at the paper, like the order of those things mattered. My fiancé's hand left my back. He took a breath that didn't turn into words. Behind us, someone in the third row cleared their throat. A chair scraped softly, then stilled. I could feel my mother's gaze like heat on the side of my face, but I didn't turn. If I turned, it would become a scene I couldn't control. The second officer, taller, older, stepped closer to the little table where we'd signed the ceremony program for the photographer. The silver pen set was still there, the one we'd picked because it looked classic. He didn't touch it. He didn't touch anything that belonged to us. He just leaned in enough to read the names printed on the notice. Erin finally found her voice, but it came out as a whisper aimed at the officiant, not me. "What does that mean?" The officiant swallowed. He set the folder down on the table like it weighed more than it did. "We can't proceed." My fiancé made a small sound in the back of his throat, like a warning to himself. He kept his face pointed toward the guests, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the floral arch like he could outstare it back into place. The older officer held up one hand, palm out, the way people do in a grocery store aisle when they need you to pause without making it a confrontation. "Sir, step to your right." End quote. My fiancé didn't move right away. He looked at me instead, and for a second his mouth tried to form my name. I didn't give him anything. I kept my eyes on the paper. He stepped to his right. My bridesmaids shifted instinctively, bodies angling like they wanted to block me from whatever was happening, but there was nowhere to block at the front of a wedding aisle. The guests were all sitting there, dressed up, watching with their hands folded in their laps because that's what you do at a ceremony when you don't know where to put your hands. The older officer nodded toward a side door near the sound booth. "We need to ask a few questions in private." Erin's fingers tightened around her clipboard. Is there a problem with the paperwork? Like a typo?" The officer didn't answer her. His eyes stayed on me this time, calm and flat, like he'd said this exact sentence to people in other places that didn't have flowers. "Ma'am, the record check shows an active marriage. We need you to come with us." The side door closed behind us with a soft latch, and the music from the ceremony space turned into a muffled throb like it was coming through a wall in a hotel. The older officer guided me into a narrow hallway lined with stacked folding chairs and a rolling cart of extra linens. Erin hurried beside me, her clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. My fiancé walked behind us, too close, his dress shoes ticking fast on the tile. "Can someone please tell me what's happening?" Erin asked. But she aimed it at the officers the way you talk to a TSA agent, careful, like the wrong tone can make it worse. The younger officer pushed open a door marked "Staff Only." Inside was a small office with a mini fridge, a paper shredder, and a desktop computer squeezed between binders. A landline phone sat on the corner of the desk, cord curled like a spring. The officiant came in last, still holding the license folder with both hands. He set it down on the desk, then immediately pulled his hands back like he'd touched something dirty. My fiancé's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. Once, then again. He pulled it out, flipped its screen down on his palm, and didn't look at it. His thumb kept rubbing the edge of the case like he was sanding something off. "Sir," the older officer said, calm and flat, "what's your legal name?" My fiancé gave it. First, middle, last. Smooth. Too smooth. "And your date of birth?" He answered again, eyes on a spot above the computer monitor. The younger officer sat at the desktop and woke it with the mouse. The screen lit up with a county seal and a login page. He typed with 2 fingers, then paused, waiting for something to load. I stood by the door because nobody told me where to stand. My veil brushed the back of my arm when I shifted. Erin hovered at my shoulder, breathing shallow like she was counting seconds. The older officer turned to me. "Ma'am, what county did you apply in?" I said it, and the words came out clipped. The name of the county sounded stupid in my mouth, like a piece of trivia nobody should need during a wedding. He nodded once and looked back at my fiancé. "Have you ever been married before?" My fiancé's jaw worked. "Yes. We're separated." "He's daughters." The older officer didn't react to the word. He didn't argue with it. He just asked, "Divorced?" My fiancé held his hands out a little, palms up, like he was offering something reasonable. "It's in process." Erin made a small noise, not a gasp, more like a breath that caught. The younger officer turned the monitor slightly, just enough that the older officer could see. The screen showed a simple record page with black text and a red block across the top. Active marriage. Under it was a name I didn't recognize and a date that wasn't recent enough to explain away with paperwork. The older officer leaned in and read it without moving his lips. Then he looked at me again. "Ma'am," he said, "this is what flagged the license." My fiancé took 1 step forward. "That's old. It shouldn't." "Sir," the older officer cut in, same tone. "Step back." My fiancé stopped. His phone buzzed again, loud in the small room. From the hallway, we could hear the ceremony space chairs shifting, a low hum of voices, the kind of sound people make when they're trying not to be rude but they can't sit in silence. Someone laughed, short and sharp, like it escaped by accident. Erin slipped out her own phone and typed fast with 1 hand. "I'm going to tell the DJ to stop the music. And the photographer..." She looked at me, finally, eyes wide. "Do you want me to send everyone to the bar? Keep them seated?" My throat tightened around nothing. I nodded once because it was the only motion I trusted. The officiant cleared his throat, then didn't speak. He picked up the license folder, opened it, and stared at the blank line where I'd expected signatures. His pen set was still in there, tucked neatly, useless. The older officer lifted the landline receiver and dialed. The cord stretched across the desk. He turned his body slightly away, speaking low. Then he covered the mouthpiece and looked back at me. "Ma'am, the spouse listed here is..." He said the name. It wasn't a name from my fiancé's past. It wasn't a name I'd ever heard in any story he'd told me. My fiancé's phone buzzed again, and this time he looked at it. By the time I got to the hotel, my dress felt heavier than it had in the morning. The suite door shut behind me, and the hallway noise disappeared. A garment bag leaned against the wall where the bellman had left it earlier, still tagged with our last name, his last name written in thick marker. My veil was crumpled over my forearm like a towel. My maid of honor, Tasha, followed me in and set her clutch on the counter. She didn't ask questions. She just reached for the zipper at the back of my dress with careful fingers, like we were doing this after a normal ceremony. The sink faucet was motion sensor, and it turned on by itself when I leaned in. Cold water hit my hands. On my ring finger, the band caught the light. I stared at it the way you stare at a price tag you didn't notice until you got to the register. Tasha cleared her throat. "Do you want me to call your mom?" I shook my head once. It wasn't a decision that felt brave. It felt like the only thing I could control. My phone was in my purse. I pulled it out and set it on the bathroom counter. Screen up. 3 missed calls. All from him. I didn't open them. I turned the phone face down and slid it a few inches away from the edge, like distance could keep it from buzzing through the marble. In the bedroom, my overnight bag sat half-packed on the ottoman. The honeymoon itinerary binder cream paper, gold lettering was on top like a joke someone had left for me. I opened it anyway. Page 1. Flight confirmation. Page 2. Hotel check-in times. A line of numbers that had seemed romantic yesterday looked like a list of charges now. I called the airline because it was the first thing on the page, and because my hands needed something to do. The hold music came on, thin and tinny through the speaker. I stood at the window and watched valet cars pull up and pull away, headlights sliding across the glass. When a woman finally answered, her voice was cheerful in a way that felt automatic. "Thank you for calling. How can I help you today?" I looked at the flights on the page. My name, his name, seats together. "I need to cancel," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Okay," she said, still bright. "Are you looking for a refund or a credit?" I blinked at the fine print. "What's the fee?" she told me, and I wrote it in the margin with a pen from the hotel notepad. Numbers, deadlines, the kind of details that made the day feel real in the worst way. After the airline, I opened my email. The inbox was already filling. A subject line from the venue: "Event hold, please advise." Another from the florist: "Delivery complete, final invoice attached." The caterer: "Balance due. Staff already on site." Each message had a timestamp. Each one was proof that the world kept moving even when mine had stopped. Tasha sat at the small table by the couch and pulled her laptop closer. "Tell me what you want me to handle," she said, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I walked to the bathroom again, not because I needed to, but because the tile was cool under my feet and the mirror gave me something to aim my eyes at. I slid my ring off. It caught for a second over my knuckle, then came free. I set it on the edge of the sink, just to the left of the soap dish. The metal made a soft click against the porcelain. Behind me, the phone buzzed on the counter where I'd left it face down. Once, then again. I didn't touch it. I opened a new email and typed with stiff fingers: "County Clerk's Office request for certified marriage record and license status." I didn't know the exact phrasing, so I searched it and copied the words that sounded official. Then I called the clerk's office number I found online. A recording answered. "Press 1 for hours. Press 2 for records." I pressed 2. The line rang, then went to voicemail. I left my name and my number. I didn't mention a wedding. I didn't mention police. I said license and verification, like I was ordering a transcript. When I hung up, my phone buzzed again. This time, Tasha looked up from her laptop. "He's not stopping." I picked up my phone, still face down, and held it without flipping it over. My thumb rested on the edge of the case. I could feel the vibration even after it stopped. I set it back down. An hour later, an email came in from an address that ended in .gov. Records request. My finger hovered over it before I clicked. The email from the county had a case number in the subject line and an address in the body, like it was listing a shipping destination. I sat at the little hotel desk in a sweatshirt and yesterday's mascara, scrolling with one hand and holding a room service pen in the other. The message was polite. It explained how to request a certified copy. It also confirmed the spouse on file and the mailing address tied to the record. I wrote the street name on the notepad. Then I tore the page off and folded it twice, sharp creases, like making it smaller would make it less real. Tasha watched from the edge of the bed, laptop open, a cancellation email drafted but not sent. She didn't ask where I was going. She just slid my car keys across the desk when I stood up. The bouquet was still in the corner by the mini-fridge, the stems wrapped in damp paper. I picked it up without thinking, then set it back down. My fingers still smelled like cut greenery when I grabbed my purse. In the parking garage, the air was cold and concrete damp. My heels from the ceremony were in a dust bag in the trunk. I wore sneakers now. The sound of them on the ramp echoed too loudly. The folded notepad page sat in the cup holder. Every red light, my eyes dropped to it. The address led to a quiet street with mailboxes clustered at the curb and winter bare trees over the sidewalks. I slowed down before the number, scanning driveways the way you look for a friend's house on the first visit. Halfway up the block, I saw his car, same charcoal sedan, same scuff on the rear bumper, parked along the curb like it belonged there. I didn't pull in behind it. I went past, turned at the corner, and came back so I could park 2 houses down without my brake lights flaring right in front of it. My hands were steady on the steering wheel until I killed the engine. Then my fingers went stiff, locked around the leather like it might move on its own. I got out and walked, purse strap tight across my shoulder. The street was quiet in that midday way, nobody home from school yet, no lawnmowers, just distant traffic and a dog barking somewhere behind a fence. The mailbox at the address had a nameplate bolted to the front. It wasn't his last name. It was hers. I stood there for a second, staring at black letters on brushed metal. My breath came out in a thin line, visible in the cold. I climbed the steps and knocked. Not a polite tap, not a pounding, just firm enough that whoever was inside couldn't pretend they hadn't heard it. Footsteps approached. The deadbolt turned. The door opened a few inches, chain still on. A woman looked at me through the gap. Late 30s, hair pulled back, sweatshirt sleeves shoved to her elbows like she'd been cleaning. Her eyes went straight to my face. Not my hands. not my ring finger. "You're her," she said. I didn't answer. My throat didn't do anything useful. She unhooked the chain and opened the door wider. "Come in," she said, then stepped back without warmth or hostility. Just a decision. The entryway smelled like laundry detergent. A pair of men's dress shoes sat by the wall. Toes pointed toward the door. The same brand he wore to our rehearsal dinner. She walked ahead of me into a small living room. A throw blanket was folded on the couch. A TV remote sat on a coffee table with a stack of unopened mail. She didn't offer me a seat. She didn't sit either. She just picked up her phone from the table and unlocked it with her thumb. "I didn't call the police to be dramatic," she said. Her voice stayed even. "I called because he was about to do it." She held the phone out to me. A message thread filled the screen. His contact photo in the corner. His name, his words. "Home tonight after the rehearsal." Under it, another line. "Don't call me at the venue." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, then came back into focus. My hands didn't move to take the phone. I kept them at my sides, fingers curled into my palm. She pulled the phone back and set it down face up on the table, like evidence you don't need permission to see. "He told me you were a coworker," she said. "Then my cousin sent me your wedding website link. The registry, the date, the venue." She pointed toward the front window with 2 fingers, and then I saw his car leave yesterday in a suit. My phone buzzed in my purse. A low vibration against the lining. I didn't reach for it. She watched my purse like she could hear it too. "He's been trying to change the record," she said, and the first crack of urgency slipped into her voice. "Last night he brought home papers. He said if I signed, the flag would clear." She picked up her phone again, thumb hovering over the screen. "He's going to come here. If he doesn't already know you're here." From outside, a car door closed on the street. The car door had barely finished closing outside when she killed the living room lights. She didn't say hide. She just pointed down the hall with 2 fingers, then reached for the deadbolt like it was a routine she'd practiced. The chain clicked into place. The sound landed hard in the quiet house. My purse buzzed again against my hip. I held it still with my palm and didn't look inside. He knocked like he belonged there. Not polite, not angry, just steady 3 taps, a pause, then 3 more. Through the peephole, she watched without moving her head much. Her phone was in her other hand, screen lit, thumb hovering near the call button. "I can see your car." His voice came through the door, close and controlled. "Open up." She didn't answer. He tried my name next. Not loud. Not pleading. Like saying it right would make the door unlock on its own. I felt my jaw tighten, and I kept my hands at my sides so I wouldn't start shaking. The chain rattled when he tested the knob once. Then he stopped. "Listen," he said, voice lowering. "This is getting out of hand. Out of hand. Like the police walking up the aisle was a misunderstanding that could be tucked back into a pocket." She finally spoke, but she aimed it at the door like she was reading a line off a form. "Leave." There was a pause. The kind where you can hear fabric shift, like he leaned closer. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I just need 5 minutes with her." I watched the back of her sweatshirt where the seams met at the shoulders. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the peephole. "No," she said. 1 word, flat. He exhaled, sharp. "You're going to regret making this ugly." She didn't respond. She didn't move. She just stood there until we heard his shoes on the porch steps, then the soft beep of a car unlocking, then the engine turning over. Only after the sound faded did she release the chain and press her forehead to the door for half a second, like she needed the wood to hold her up. "I have an attorney," she said, still facing the door. "I suggest you get one too." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. When I got back to the hotel, Tasha had turned the suite into a small command center. My veil was draped over a chair. The honeymoon binder was gone. In its place was a manila folder, a legal pad, and my laptop open to a spreadsheet. She slid a glass of water toward me. The condensation left a ring on the table. "Okay," she said quietly. "Money first, so you don't get crushed twice." We opened emails and contracts and clicked through attachment after attachment. I wrote numbers in the margins: venue deposit, florist final invoice, DJ cancellation policy. Each one had a deadline, bolded like a threat. At 2:10 p.m., my attorney's office called back an intake coordinator with a calm voice who asked for my name, my county, and whether there had been any violence. "No," I said. She scheduled me for a consult the next morning and told me to bring any documentation I had. If you have screenshots, print them, she added, like she was telling me to bring a sweater. The next day, the attorney's office smelled like coffee and copier toner. The waiting room chairs were stiff. A glass bowl of peppermint sat on the receptionist's desk, untouched. My attorney, Miss Patel, shook my hand and gestured to a chair across from her. A yellow legal pad was already centered on her desk. A stapler sat to the side like it had a permanent place. She didn't ask for the story first. She asked for dates. "When did you apply for the license?" she said, pen moving. "When was the ceremony?" Pen moving. "Did you sign anything?" Pen moving. Then she leaned back slightly and said, "Based on what you've described, you're not married." That matters. But what happened publicly still has consequences. She slid a printed checklist toward me. The paper made a soft scratch against the desk. "Annulment isn't your issue," she said. "Containment is. Refunds. Written statements to vendors if needed. And boundaries." I held the checklist down with 2 fingers so it wouldn't curl up. My nail caught on the edge. "And him?" I asked, because I needed one answer I could follow. Miss Patel's pen stopped. She looked at me like she was choosing the simplest rule to keep me safe. "Do not meet him alone," she said. "Not to talk, not to explain. If he wants to communicate, it goes through writing or through counsel." My phone buzzed in my bag like it had been waiting for that sentence. I didn't pull it out until I was back in the parking lot, standing beside my car with the checklist pressed against my thigh. One new text from him. "Can we talk? Just us, tonight." My phone stayed quiet all morning. And that almost felt worse. I sat at my kitchen table with Miss Patel's checklist spread out beside a manila folder. The folder already had a crease in it from me gripping it too hard in the parking lot yesterday. My coffee went cold. I kept lifting the mug anyway, like the motion would lead to a plan. His text was still there. "Can we talk? Just us. Tonight." I didn't answer it. I turned my phone face down and slid it under the edge of the folder so I wouldn't see the screen light up. Then I opened my laptop and wrote one email. To the officiant. Subject line. Request for copy of license packet. Incident notes. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard before I hit send. Not because I felt uncertain, because it felt like pushing the day forward on purpose. A reply came an hour later. The notification sound cut through the apartment like a dropped fork. The officiant's email was polite and stiff, the way people write when they're trying to protect themselves. Attached. Scanned packet as presented. For your records. We cannot proceed without clearance. There were 2 PDFs. I downloaded them and printed them because Miss Patel had said, print, and I needed to obey something that made sense. The printer whirred, paper slid out warm and slightly curled. I laid the pages on the table and flattened them with my palms. The packet wasn't just the license application. It had a sworn statement page, a box where someone checked no next to currently married, a signature line. His signature, dated, not the day we'd gone to the courthouse together. Not the day I'd put my name on anything. It was dated earlier, days earlier. I traced the ink with my fingertip without pressing down, like touching it could smear the truth away. My phone buzzed once under the folder. I didn't lift it. I picked up a pen instead and wrote the date in the margin, then wrote the rehearsal date under it, then the wedding date, like I was building a ladder out of numbers. Another email came in. This one from a number I didn't have saved. No greeting, just an image. A screenshot of a group chat. The header at the top read groomsmen, with a row of little icons I recognized from bachelor weekend photos. A message from his best man sat in the middle of the thread. Keep it quiet today. Under that, another line. If anyone asks, say, divorce is filed. Then a reply from someone else. She doesn't need to know details. I stared at the screen until my eyes started to sting. Not tears, just the dry burn of staring too long. I printed that too. The paper made a sharp slap when it hit the tray. I slid it behind the scanned packet and closed the folder like I was putting a lid on something that could spill. I didn't call him. I didn't take his just us meeting. I opened my contacts and started a new message to my mother. Need you and Dad tonight. Neutral place. Then one to Tasha. Can you come? Don't tell anyone why. Then I wrote one to his mother, because if I didn't control the room, someone else would. We need to meet. Not alone. I stared at the unsent messages, thumb hovering. My stomach tightened when I realized what I was doing. Not confronting him, setting terms around him. Before I could overthink it, I hit send. A few minutes later, my phone rang. No text, no warning. An actual call. His mother's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer right away. I watched it ring until it almost went to voicemail. Then I picked up. "Hello." Her voice came through smooth and clipped, like she'd already rehearsed. "Where are you?" "At home," I said, and kept my eyes on the closed folder. "We need to talk before you do something you can't take back," she said. "Tonight. Not with a crowd. Not with your friends. You and me." I held the phone away from my ear for half a second, then brought it back. "No," I said. One word, the same way the woman at the house had said it through her chain lock. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, controlled. "You're making this bigger," she said. "He made mistakes. You don't have to ruin him." I looked at the folder, the printed dates, the words "keep it quiet today." My thumb tightened on the phone. "We're meeting with both families," I said. "Or we're not meeting." Her tone sharpened. "And where do you think you're going to do that?" I didn't answer. She filled the silence herself. "Fine," she snapped. "Tonight. But you're going to listen." End quote. Then she hung up. The restaurant had a private room off the hallway, the kind with a frosted glass door and a little brass plaque that said, "Reserved." When I pushed it open, a chair scraped back hard enough to make everyone look up at once. My parents were on one side of the long table, coats still on, my dad's keys set in front of him like he didn't trust his pockets. Tasha sat near the end with her phone face down beside a water glass. Across from them, his mother sat upright with her purse on her lap, fingers locked around the strap. His best man, Kyle, hovered by the wall like he'd rather be standing than choosing a side. My fiancé came in last. No jacket, shirt sleeves rolled once. He didn't look at the menu, place cards, or the empty plates. He looked at me. A server slipped in behind us, set down a pitcher of water, then left without asking if we wanted anything. It wasn't dinner hour yet. It was too early for that. I didn't sit right away. I put my manila folder on the table first. The edge of it thumped once against the wood. His mother opened her mouth before anyone else could. "This shouldn't be happening like this." The words landed in the room and stayed there. My dad's hand moved to the folder, not opening it, just anchoring it. "It already happened," he said, voice low. My fiancé tried a smile that didn't finish forming. Can we not do this with everybody here?" Tasha didn't lift her phone. She kept it face down and slid it half an inch farther from her, like she didn't want it involved. His mother leaned forward. "He told me the divorce was filed. The county made an error. That's why the officers—" I opened the folder and took out the printed page I'd brought from the clerk's portal. I didn't wave it. I didn't hold it up. I just placed it flat and slid it across the table until it stopped in front of her purse strap. Paper on wood. A soft, final sound. No one spoke for a beat. My fiancé made a small movement, like he was going to reach for it. My dad's hand shifted, palm down on the folder, not blocking him, just making the line clear. Kyle stared at the paper without blinking. The skin along his jaw tightened. His mother picked up the page with 2 fingers like it could stain. Her eyes moved down the line that mattered. The red header. The name. The date. Her lips pressed together. "This is a snapshot," my fiancé said quickly. "It's not the whole—" The phrase from the officiant came out of my mouth before I meant to. Quiet and exact. "We can't proceed." My fiancé stopped. His throat worked. His mother's eyes snapped to me. "Don't do that," she said, sharp. "Don't speak like you're the victim of paperwork." I didn't answer. I took a second page out of the folder, the scanned packet from the officiant with the date on his signature, and slid it beside the first. Kyle's chair legs scraped again, shorter this time, like he adjusted without standing. The sound was loud in the pause. My mother finally leaned in. Her bracelets clinked softly against the table. "How long did you know?" she asked, not looking at his mother, not looking at my dad, only at him. My fiancé's eyes flicked to Kyle. Kyle lifted both hands a little, palms out. "Don't," he said under his breath. My fiancé's voice tightened. "Kyle, shut up." Kyle swallowed. His gaze dropped to the water pitcher, then back to the paper like it was safer than anyone's face. "I thought it was filed," he said. "That's what he told us." My dad didn't raise his voice. "The day of the wedding," he said. "Your text said keep it quiet." Kyle's ears went red. He glanced at my fiancé again, like he was checking for permission even now. He said the marriage wasn't dissolved yet. He said it would be handled. My fiancé's hand hit the table once, not a slam, just a hard placement. You don't know what you're talking about. No one moved. Not even his mother. Then a man I hadn't noticed at first, older, in a button-down, standing near the door like he'd been waiting for the right moment, cleared his throat. The restaurant manager, maybe, or someone his mother had brought as a buffer. He looked between the papers and my fiancé. "Sir," he said, "careful. If there's an active spouse, what's her name?" My fiancé's mouth opened. Nothing came out. By the time I got back to my car, my hands smelled like the restaurant's lemon sanitizer from the water pitcher handle. The parking lot was almost empty, but the sound of the door closing still felt loud. I set the manila folder on the passenger seat and let the seatbelt click over it like I was strapping something down. My phone lit up on the console before I even started the engine. Missed call from his mother. 2 texts from unknown numbers. A notification from Instagram. You were mentioned in a story. I didn't open anything. I flipped the phone face down and slid it into the cup holder so the screen couldn't keep flashing at me. At home, the hallway light outside my apartment had burned out again. I unlocked my door with my key instead of the smart lock, because the smart lock sent alerts, and I didn't want another record of me entering a place that was suddenly supposed to feel like shelter. Inside, the living room still had wedding things in it. A gift bag on the floor from a coworker who dropped it off early. A stack of place cards on the coffee table. A ribbon spool with the price sticker still on it. Tasha came in behind me and set her keys in the same spot on the counter like she was trying to make the night normal by force. She didn't sit down. She walked straight to the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and turned the screen so I could see. A Facebook post from his aunt. Ceremony postponed due to a clerical issue. Please respect their privacy. Under it, comments stacked fast. Question marks. Sad faces. People tagging other people. Tasha's cursor hovered over the reply box, then stopped. She looked at me. I shook my head once. I pulled up my messages, opened the bridesmaids group chat, and typed with my thumbs. I'm safe. I'm home. Please don't post or respond to anyone. I'm not explaining anything. I stared at the last sentence, then hit send before I could rewrite it into something softer. 3 dots popped up immediately, then a flood. Are you okay? What happened? Is he arrested? My mom is calling me. I didn't answer. I set the phone down, face up this time, and watched the notifications stack without touching them. The door buzzer in my building went off. One long press. Then another. I crossed the living room with my keys in my hand like that would change anything. Through the peephole, I saw him in the hallway. No jacket. Hair slightly messed up like he'd run his hand through it too many times. His mouth moved once, like he was talking to the door. I didn't open it. He knocked. 2 quick knocks, then waited. Please, he said, loud enough to carry through the door but not loud enough to make a scene. Just open it. Tasha stepped close behind me. I could feel her breath on my shoulder. I slid the chain into place anyway, even though I wasn't opening the door. Metal on metal, a small, deliberate sound. He knocked again. I can fix this. I didn't answer. His voice tightened. They're saying things. My mom's getting calls. You don't have to let them. I stayed still with my forehead a few inches from the door, not touching it, just close enough to hear him breathe between words. Tasha lifted her phone like she might record it, then thought better of it and set it down on the entry table with a soft tap. He tried my name again. Then he lowered his voice. It was going to be handled, I swear. The building's hallway was quiet. No footsteps. No neighbors opening doors. Just him, insisting into a piece of painted wood. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out without turning away from the door. One new text, unknown number, but the message preview filled the screen. He's telling people you knew. He's changing the timeline. Don't answer him. No signature, no name. But I knew who it was. I swallowed once and tucked the phone into my palm like a secret. He knocked again, harder this time. Open the door. I didn't. A notification slid down across my screen before I could lock it. You were tagged in a photo. I tapped it without thinking. The image loaded slow, then sharp. A backyard table under string lights, plastic cups, a cake on a paper plate, and him standing close behind her, his hand on her shoulder smiling at the camera like the next 2 weeks didn't exist. The timestamp at the bottom read, 2 weeks ago. The next morning I cleared my kitchen table like I was making room for a project. I moved the gift bags to the corner. I stacked the place cards into a shoebox. I wiped a sticky ring off the wood with a paper towel and set my laptop in the center like it was a scale I needed to balance. My phone stayed face down beside it. Miss Patel had told me to bring dates and documents, so I made dates and documents. I opened a blank spreadsheet and typed the first line, rehearsal dinner, the second line, license appointment, the third line, ceremony. I filled in times the way you fill in miles on a reimbursement form. Exact. Boring. Impossible to argue with. Then I opened my email and searched one word at a time. Airbnb. A subject line popped up from weeks back. Your reservation is confirmed. I clicked it, and my stomach did that small drop it had been doing since the aisle. It wasn't our honeymoon. It was a 2-night stay, Friday to Sunday, booked under his name for 2 guests. The address was a small town, an hour outside the city, the kind people use for quiet weekends. The dates lined up with the weekend he'd told me was a work trip. At the bottom of the email was a PDF attachment. I downloaded it, opened it, and watched the invoice load. His name, the dates, the guest count, a total price. A tiny line that said paid, with a method I didn't recognize, like the money itself didn't matter as much as the fact it happened. My fingers hovered over the print button. I printed it anyway. The printer spit the page out with a warm curl. I flattened it with my palm and stared at the 2 guests line until it stopped looking like a number and started looking like a decision he made while I was planning seating charts. I slid the invoice into the manila folder behind the group chat screenshot and the officiant scan. Paper on paper, a soft shuffle that sounded too normal for what it meant. Tasha came by after lunch and didn't take her coat off right away. She set a grocery bag on the counter, 2 iced coffees, and a pack of sticky tabs. She didn't ask what I'd found. She just pulled a chair out and sat. "Anything new?" she asked. I tapped the Airbnb invoice with one finger instead of answering. Her eyes followed the motion. Her mouth tightened. Then she nodded once like she'd expected it. We worked without talking much. I pulled up my photo library and searched his name, then searched the month, then searched locations, restaurants, bars, work conference. Each time a grid of images appeared, my thumb moved slower, like swiping too fast could make me miss something. Midway through, I found a screenshot I'd taken months ago when he'd texted me a calendar invite for a client dinner. I'd saved it because I'd been proud of him. Now I zoomed in and saw the title wasn't client. It was a first name I didn't know, followed by a heart emoji I'd missed because I hadn't been looking for it back then. I didn't print that one yet. I saved it into a folder on my desktop, labeled Records, and let it sit there like a loaded thing I wasn't ready to set down. At 3:07 p.m., Miss Patel's office emailed, "Draft filing attached. Review and sign." The attachment was a neat packet with my name typed in clean font and blank lines for signatures. There were words like statement and request and documentation, but it didn't read like a story. It read like a door closing. I printed the signature pages. The paper slid out, crisp and white. My pen felt light in my hand. I signed where she'd highlighted in yellow. No commentary. No extra notes, just my name, written once, then again. When I was done, I slid the pages into an envelope, sealed it, and pressed my thumb over the flap until it stuck. Then I opened a new tab and searched the county clerk's appointment system. The earliest slot was Friday morning. I booked it and screenshot the confirmation. The time, the address, the window number. My phone buzzed while I was still looking at the screenshot. A text from him. "I know you're going to the clerk. I'll be there." The county clerk's office smelled like wet coats and printer ink, and the line moved in short, irritated steps. A number dispenser sat on a pole by the door. I pulled a ticket, felt the thin paper tear cleanly, and watched the red digits above the windows flick forward like they didn't care why any of us were there. Couples stood shoulder to shoulder with folders and envelopes. A man in a work shirt kept tapping his pen against a clipboard. Someone rocked a stroller with their foot. A security guard near the entrance nodded at nobody, eyes scanning the room in slow loops. I kept my manila folder pressed flat against my stomach like armor. Inside it, the officiant scan and the screenshots sat behind a crisp printout I'd picked up from Miss Patel's office that morning, my location history export, stapled in the corner, pins and timestamps running down the page in neat columns. Window 4 lit up, now serving 42. I stepped forward before my nerves could argue. The chair at the little counter scraped as the clerk shifted behind the glass. She had a lanyard and a nameplate that read L. Martinez. A stamp pad sat beside her keyboard, lid slightly crooked like it had been opened 100 times today. License application? she asked, already reaching for the slot. I slid my paperwork under the glass. Paper on laminate, a soft drag. Her eyes moved over the forms fast. Professional, no drama. She typed my fiancé's name into her system without looking up. Behind me, the line breathed and adjusted. Someone's boots squeaked on the tile. A couple whispered and stopped when they realized I could hear them. Miss Martinez's screen reflected faintly in the glass. I couldn't read it, but I could see the moment something changed in her face, nothing emotional, just a shift into procedure. She clicked once. Then she clicked again. Her mouth tightened, and she reached for a yellow slip from a stack to her left. I felt my phone vibrate in my coat pocket, muted by fabric. I didn't reach for it. I kept both hands on the edge of the counter, nails pressing into the laminate. Miss Martinez lifted her eyes for the first time. "Ma'am," she said, flat and clear, "we can't issue this license." The words dropped into the space like a heavy object. "Why?" a woman behind me blurted, then caught herself like she'd said it out loud by mistake. Miss Martinez didn't answer the line. She kept her attention on me. "There's an active marriage on file for the applicant." My throat tightened. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. I just stood there while she printed something and the printer behind her chirped and fed paper. A shadow slid into my peripheral vision. He moved up beside me like he had a right to the counter, like the last 2 weeks were a scheduling problem. His hair was still damp at the edges like he'd showered in a hurry. He placed his palm on the counter, close enough that our hands almost touched. "I can explain," he said quickly, aimed at Miss Martinez. "It's pending." "The divorce." Miss Martinez didn't even look at him. She kept her gaze on my face, voice steady. "I'm speaking to the applicant listed on the request," she said. "Ma'am, do you want a certified record printout today?" I swallowed once. "Yes." My fiancé's jaw jumped. "This is insane," he hissed, low. "She's making it sound like—" Miss Martinez slid the yellow slip under the glass toward me. "Take this to records, Window 7. They'll provide the certified copy. If you'd like to proceed with an application later, you'll need clearance in the system first." Clearance. System. Later. Not one word in her mouth had anything to do with vows. I took the slip, folded it once, and tucked it into my folder. My hands didn't shake until I turned away from the counter. He followed me with tight steps. "You're doing this on purpose," he said, still low, but sharper now that we'd left the glass and the clerk's calm voice behind. "You're making a show." End quote. At records, a different clerk slid a stamped document through the slot without looking up. The stamp hit the page with a dull thud. I held the paper by the corner like it might smear. He leaned in close as we walked out. "Say something," he said. "Tell them it's in process." I didn't. Outside, the January air slapped cold against my cheeks. The parking lot was bright and flat, sunlight bouncing off windshields. My car was 3 rows over. He stayed on my shoulder all the way there, talking like he could fill the silence enough to erase the record. When I reached my driver's side door, he stepped in front of it, blocking the handle with his hip. "5 minutes," he said. "Just 5. Don't do this in front of everybody." I slid my folder up against my chest and felt the stapled location history pages inside it, the pins lined up like receipts from a life he'd sworn wasn't happening. He held his hand out like he expected me to take it. "Please," he said again, and his eyes flicked toward the building, toward the people coming and going, toward the witnesses he couldn't control. I didn't move. By Thursday morning, my name was still sitting in people's mouths like a rumor they could taste. I went to the church because it was my shift, because the calendar reminder had already been there before any of this, and because I needed one place where my life didn't revolve around his explanations. The fellowship hall smelled like old coffee and wool. A folding table was set up by the doors with a sign-in binder, a stack of blank name tags, and a box of lanyards tangled together like headphones. Volunteers moved winter coats from bins to racks, sleeves flopping over their arms. Someone's kid chased a rolling tape dispenser across the tile until a woman snapped, "Not today," and scooped it up. Tasha walked in behind me with a cardboard tray of coffees. She set one by the binder and slid her phone face down next to it, without looking at me. The volunteer coordinator, Marcy, stood behind the table with a pen tucked into her bun. She looked up, saw me, and her face tightened in a way that wasn't judgment. It was caution. "Hey," she said softly, and her fingers tapped the binder like she was grounding herself. "I'm glad you came." I nodded. "I wasn't here to talk." Marcy handed me a lanyard and a blank name tag. My hand closed around the plastic clip. It was cold, cheap, real. Then the side doors opened again, and the room changed. He came in like he belonged to the building. Jeans, boots, a jacket he'd worn on our Sunday errands days. He scanned the room, found me, and walked straight toward the sign-in table. A couple of men unloading boxes by the wall slowed down. A teenage volunteer stopped mid-step with a coat draped over her arms. Someone whispered something that made another person turn their head. He smiled at Marcy like nothing had happened. "Morning," he said. "I'm on the roster for setup." Marcy's pen didn't move. She didn't smile back. She flipped to the next page in the binder and ran her finger down the list, slow enough that everyone could watch the motion. "I'm not seeing you," she said. He leaned in, keeping his voice low, like privacy was something he could demand by tone alone. "I'm supposed to do announcements at 10. Marcy looked past him for a second, eyes landing on me, then back to the binder. Her throat worked. "We can't proceed," she said, and the phrase sounded different here, smaller but sharper. He blinked like she'd insulted him. "What do you mean you can't?" He cut himself off and tried again, softer. "Marcy, come on." Marcy reached under the table and pulled out a manila envelope like it had been waiting. She set it on the tabletop and didn't open it, just placed it there between the name tags and the coffees. He stared at the envelope, then at her. "Is this about the wedding?" he asked, and his voice rose on the last word despite himself. Marcy didn't answer him. She looked at me again, eyes asking a question she couldn't say. I opened my folder and took out the certified record printout from the clerk. The stamp was still crisp on the page. I held it by the corner so my fingers wouldn't smudge it, then slid it across the table toward Marcy. Paper on plastic tablecloth. A soft drag. The room went quiet in that church hallway, where you can still hear coats rustling, but everyone stops pretending they aren't listening. Marcy read the header, then the line that mattered. Her lips pressed together. He reached for the paper. I didn't pull it back. I didn't push it away. I just let it sit there like a fact. "That's not," he started. Tasha's chair scraped back behind me. Not aggressive, just a warning sound that made heads turn. Marcy opened the envelope and pulled out one photo print. Glossy. Full color. A restaurant receipt. Enlarged. The date circled in black ink. The words "Happy Anniversary" written in someone's handwriting at the bottom. He saw it and went still. "Who gave you that?" he snapped, and the question landed too loud, too public. Marcy didn't flinch. "You need to leave," she said. "Today. Now." He looked around, realizing he had an audience. The teenage volunteer stared at her shoes. One of the men by the boxes stared straight at him. He looked back at me, eyes hard. "Say something," he hissed. "Tell them you're doing this to me." End quote. I didn't. I hooked my lanyard clip onto my name tag and pressed it flat against my sweater, hands steady. Then I turned away from the table and walked toward the coat racks, like the air around him wasn't worth reacting to. Behind me, his boots shifted on the tile. His breath came fast. Marcy's voice stayed calm. "Sir." The door. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't look until I was alone by the supply closet, one hand on a box of gloves. One new message from him. "I'm coming over tonight. We're finishing this." When my phone buzzed with his message, I was already standing at the kitchen counter with a roll of packing tape in my hand. I'd spent the afternoon doing things that didn't look dramatic from the outside. I printed refund confirmations. I forwarded vendor emails into a folder Miss Patel asked me to keep. I boxed up favors I'd never handed out. I slid unopened wedding gifts back into their bags so I wouldn't have to look at the cards again. On the counter, my ring sat in a small jewelry box I'd found in the back of my dresser. The lid was closed. I kept touching it like it was a button. "I'm coming over tonight. We're finishing this." I didn't text back. I opened my laptop and sent one short email to Miss Patel with a screenshot attached. No explanation, just the timestamp. Then I called Tasha. "I'm not opening my door," I said when she picked up. "Good," she said, and I could hear keys in her hand already. "I'm on my way." It wasn't next-rated. I also called my building manager, because Miss Patel's checklist had a line that said witnesses matter and I was done being cornered in private. When Tasha arrived, she didn't come in talking. She set her tote bag on the floor by the entry table, took her phone out, and placed it face down beside my keys. We waited in the lobby instead of my hallway. The lobby had a couch with worn arms, a bulletin board full of lost dog flyers, and a security camera angled toward the mailboxes. The building manager, Mr. Delgado, stood near the front door with a clipboard tucked against his ribs like this was a maintenance issue. At 7:18 p.m., his car pulled up. I watched him through the glass as he got out fast, shoulders tense, like he'd been practicing what he wanted to say in the drive over. He saw me and slowed for half a second, eyes flicking to Tasha, then to Mr. Delgado. He still smiled like he could reset the room. "Hey," he said, too casual for the way his hands kept opening and closing at his sides. "Can we go upstairs?" Mr. Delgado didn't move. "You're not going upstairs," he said, calm. "This resident asked you to meet here." My fiancé's jaw tightened. He looked at me. "I'm not here to cause a problem," he said. "I just need 5 minutes, alone." I didn't answer. Tasha shifted her weight beside me, coffee stillness in her posture, eyes forward. He stepped closer anyway, not touching me, but close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn at our rehearsal dinner. "I didn't mean for any of this," he said, voice dropping. "My mom, she pushed. There were timing issues. I can explain." I held the envelope I'd brought down with me, my name written on the front in pen. Inside was a copy of Miss Patel's filing receipt and a single page with one line on it. All further communication through counsel. It wasn't a speech. It was a boundary in ink. I extended the envelope toward him. He didn't take it at first. He stared at it like it was a trick. "What is that?" he demanded. I kept holding it out. Mr. Delgado cleared his throat once, like a gentle warning. "Sir," he said, "take it or leave. Then you go." My fiancé snatched the envelope with 2 fingers and flipped it over like there might be another message on the back. "So, you're not even going to talk to me?" I didn't answer. His face changed, frustration pushing past control. "You're acting like I'm—" He cut himself off and tried again, softer, like he was switching tactics. "Please, just tell me what you want." I watched the lobby doors reflect us 3 people, and a clipboard and an envelope like a scene that could have been any other building, any other night. I picked up my purse strap and turned toward the elevator. Behind me, he took one quick step, like he might follow. "Mr." Delgado's body shifted in his path without drama, just position. "You can't do this," my fiancé called after me, voice cracking on the last word. "You can't just shut me out." I didn't look back. Upstairs, the hallway was quiet. My apartment door waited the way it always had, paint scuffed near the lock from old keys. I wrapped my hand around the door handle and felt the cold metal under my palm. I pull it shut.